Are you looking for ways to build up your presence while you're facilitating virtually? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down my top tips for being a master virtual facilitator. Hi friends, I'm Vanessa and I am the CEO of Anchored Training, and on this channel I help aspiring instructional designers, e-learning developers, and learning and development professionals get off of the sidelines and get into the L&D game. And today we're going to talk all about virtual facilitation. So I know it has been hard for facilitators to master facilitation in this virtual environment. You miss, vibing off of your students or your learners in the classroom, picking up cues that you only get when you're in person, some of those nonverbals, some of those shifts, and just you can generally sense the mood when you are in person and straight looking at your classroom. And when you are now facilitating through a computer where everyone is just a little square, some people have their cameras turned on, some people can't figure out that they need to be muting their microphone, or even worse, when you're sharing your screen and you only get to see maybe 3 out of the 25, 30 students in the session, it is really hard to be able to kind of read that room. It's also very different going from in-person to virtual facilitation. A lot of people that were facilitating in person, they missed the mark in facilitating virtually and had to kind of retrain themselves on how to get that same engagement and that same expertise and presence in a virtual setting. So I'm going to give you some of my top tips. So first things first impressions and setting expectations is everything. That's why I always begin every single session, just a quick introduction of myself. And if it's, a class that maybe I am doing a cohort and this is maybe my 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 10th session with them, I'll still do some sort of team building introduction. Like maybe it's sharing a fun fact. Maybe it's sharing, where is your favorite college football team or where you'd love to be right now or anywhere but here, right? So doing those types of things help to build the team and that cohort together and helps you get to know me a little bit better. So after I make sure that my class knows me and we have some time to get to know each other a little bit better, I love to make sure that I set the expectations with my classroom. And maybe it'll be, a couple of times if I'm working with them, through a series of modules. I won't go through the expectations every single time. I'll just maybe pop in some reminders about certain things here and there, but I do make sure that the first 2 sessions, I just reiterate the expectations of the class, and that way everyone is on the same page. If you were not in the first session, then you can pick them up in the second, and it's a good time to remind everyone. So things that I set expectations for is things like how to ask a question. Are we due at any time, or is it pop it into the chat? Should you send it to me privately? Is there maybe a Q&A section of the web conferencing tool that they should pop those questions in? And I just like to set that tone, because sometimes the chat can be super distracting when it's going off, right? And you see all these pop-ups. And as a facilitator, my eye automatically gravitates to what's coming up and popping up on my screen. So being able to just share where those questions can go, and then maybe to hold them and then put them in the chat when I stop and ask for questions, that's a really good way to make sure that I'm not getting too distracted and really make sure that I'm staying, on top of my game. It also is good for the learner, because then the classroom, they know, how they should be asking questions, because that's probably something that they're not sure of. It's different in a virtual setting or a in-person setting where you could just raise your hand or something like that. Instead, in a virtual setting, you're not sure if you should use the raise your hand tool, pop into the chat, physically raise your hand. So it helps to ease some of that unknowingness or that maybe sometimes nervous anxiousness that a learner could feel before they go into a session, especially when you're having some of those more difficult training sessions. I also think just having and setting those expectations of kind of how the class is going to work and how they're going to interact with you says to your learners that you actually stopped and you thought about how the class is going to run. So it's not like you just popped up on camera and said, okay guys, let's start talking about, I don't know, customer service. You actually took the time to stop, think about how the class should run and what's the best for them and for yourself as the facilitator. And it just makes you look hella more prepared. So that is going to bring me to my next tip. Be prepared. So facilitation in this day and age, so many things happen. I mean, I've seen people completely lose their internet in the middle of a training, their screen being unable to share, all the different things. Make sure that you're having plans B, C, and D. Get yourself a hotspot. I mean, I know my internet here has been awful lately. And in the middle of sessions, it just completely shuts down on me. And thank God I have someone else that is helping me produce the sessions because they've been able to pick up where my internet has completely crapped out on me. So I know as a virtual facilitator, it can be tempting to kind of open book virtual facilitation and just kind of have your facilitator guide there next to you and just kind of hop up on the screen and just, start training. And that's a terrible idea. I know that when you are in a classroom setting, you may be moving around to different stations, moving around the classroom. So it's harder to just, sit there by your book or your script. Whereas in a virtual setting, you're kind of bound to wherever wide your camera goes. So I get that. But it's really important that you take the time to run through the scripts a couple of times and actually physically practice it using the video conferencing tool. Because if you're a freelancer, you might have to use whatever tool your client wants you to use, and where you may be comfortable with Zoom, they may use Teams or they may use WebEx. And you need to make sure that you have some time to familiarize yourself with where the different things are. So if you're using a whiteboard, where that is and how to use it. Breakout rooms, sending people to breakout rooms, bringing them back. How do you set those up? If you're using a Google Jamboard, how do you create one and send that link out? All of those different little things are all good things to practice. Ask a friend, ask a family member, ask anyone, a colleague to jump into a dry run with you. So they could also give you some constructive feedback about your facilitation performance, right? There is no shame in asking a friend, a family member, or colleague for that feedback because it's just going to make you better. And it's easier for you to send someone to a breakout room actually than just kind of thinking that you know how it works. So that's super helpful as well. Make sure you are reading the script in case you need to bring in any examples. So for example, I'm working on diversity, equity, and inclusion training for a client, and some of the sections of the different modules, facilitators have to bring in their own experiences, right? So time that you've had someone throw a microaggression at your way. Well, those are all things that we're not going to provide to you as this is your microaggression. It's your own experience. We want you to share that because we want you to more personally connect to the content. But you can't do that on the fly. You have to actually sit and think about your examples beforehand. So for example, when I was practicing facilitating that section, actually, I had 2 microaggressions that have happened to me that I had to get some feedback from a colleague about which one I should go with, which would resonate better with my classrooms, and which is a better, microaggression example. And we went through the 2, and they're both good, and they both hit different audiences in different ways. But we decided ultimately to go with the one because we thought it would be, more something that can seem super unintentional and an innocent comment that probably happens every single day. Whereas the other one was definitely, now thinking back about it, a micro assault, which is a very blatant sexist comment that was made my way. But that is a different story for a different video. Or maybe a happy hour with all of my YouTube friends. Anyway, but if I had just wung it, maybe I would have said the second microaggression, which would have been fine. It just definitely would take the class in a totally different direction than I think I would have intended. So having that chance to run through my microaggressions with my colleague beforehand was just so much better, and it definitely was a smoother experience and a microaggression that people were actually able to really all relate to in some different way, shape, or form. Also, so as you can tell, I talk fast. I'm from Jersey. Growing up, I loved the show Blossom, and I love the character Six, and she talks super fast, so I wanted to make sure that I talk super fast because I wanted to be like Six. And now I talk super fast. And sometimes I mumble, which I'm sure you all have heard at some point here at my channel. And so it is so important to practice facilitating and practice your pacing with someone else in the room. That way you can know where different sections you're going too fast, or maybe speaking too fast on something, or where you may be talking too slow, and you could probably pick up the pace in different areas. So all of those different things are things that you have to work out. So having those dry runs, and I really do recommend at least 2, so helpful. So as a facilitator and someone here on YouTube, I know that this is my time to be energetic, upbeat, and make sure I'm exuding confidence. And frankly, I look at facilitating like a performance. And I think of myself as Beyonce going on stage, and I put on my own Sasha Fierce before I jump on camera, or I am in front of a new client, or I'm in front of the camera facilitating for the first time. And that is something that I have to do in order to bring my energy level up in order to, be the best facilitator for myself. So I have my own little prep. So I make sure that I have my coffee, my water. Actually, if you follow Anchored Training on Instagram, I did do a reel about this. I was doing a webinar and showing how I prepped, and it was having my coffee, having my water, my double screens were up, and then right before I am getting started and I'm all launched up, I have to put on music and I have to have a dance party because I need to make sure that my energy is going to be up. So I throw out my favorite songs for at the very least 5 minutes, and I just jam. And then I take a deep breath and I'm ready to get on camera, and my energy is up. I'm excited. I'm happy because I just listened to some of my favorite songs. So I'll listen to a lot of reggaeton, so I listen to a lot of Bad Bunny lately. I listen to a lot of 90s music, so 90s freestyle, always my jam. Poison by Belle Biv DeVoe is just amazing. Some New Kids on the Block, sometimes some Backstreet Boys are in sync, and I just love to have a good dance party. And that to me is the way that I know that I can help bring my energy up. So I encourage you to do a little bit of something that brings your energy up before you're on camera. And I know that it may seem that you're being inauthentic by thinking of, facilitating as a performance, like you're putting on a different character. I just see it as I'm summoning a different side of me, that if I'm always that turned on, I would exhaust myself. So I'm definitely an extrovert introvert mix. When I'm in front of the camera, I treat it as a performance, and I have that different tone, I have that inflection. I show enthusiasm about the sections that I'm facilitating that I'm truly really excited about. I make sure that I show interest in my students and connecting them. When we're doing things like DE&I training, soft skills training, customer service training, I love making that connection with their experiences with the material. Because it really brings it, more whole. So I definitely recommend doing whatever that you need to hype yourself up, but think of facilitating like a performance. They're here to see you and get the most out of the learning from you. If someone is sitting there and talking like this and not showing any sort of engagement, enthusiasm, or fun, I'm probably not going to want to watch. I'm going to get bored. I'm going to close my eyes, or I'm just going to shut down and not really engage with the learning. So having someone that has that different inflection and is just a little bit more fun and engaging to listen to will definitely make me pay attention better. Of course, at the end of the day, it's all about the content and all about the learning. So that has to be the foundation of the, best part. But having that performance and that presence and pop on screen is definitely the bow that ties everything together. And so this next one is hard. It's hard for me. And it is not to look down at yourself on the screen while you are talking, because as you can see, I'm looking down and I look like I'm looking at all of you, or I'm probably really just looking at myself to make sure I look okay and I'm not, out of focus or something. But in actuality, you see me looking down and not looking at you. And if you're actually looking up and at your camera lens, you can actually make that connection with the learner. So you're not actually looking into their eyes, but they may think that you are, right? And it feels more that way, like you would in a in-person session where you do make eye contact with your students and you do talk to them. And so that is super important and it's a skill. So my camera, I have my lens on the side. So for a while I would just kind of keep looking over here to make sure that I was not out of focus. And I'm making it more of an effort to make sure I'm constantly just looking at the camera lens. And it is hard and it takes a lot of practice to do. So that's not something that I expect you all to run out of the gate and do right away, but something that you should be doing. And so enough about me and enough about you. Let's talk about your learners. You have to be able to pick up social cues and these kind of like nonverbals through virtual, which is definitely harder, which is why a lot of my sessions, we definitely ask that we have cameras on. I can't tell what you are thinking, doing. I don't even know if you're there, if you're a black box with your name on it. I need to be able to see you. And I need, especially for a lot of content that I'm delivering, I'm looking for you to provide me feedback. I'm looking for you to provide your own examples. So I need to be able to see you and make sure that you're engaging. So I'm looking for things like if you're fidgeting, if you're looking down, if it looks like you're looking down like this, which probably means to me you're on your phone, or if you are, looking off to the side, and I know that that is a difficult one because some people might have multiple monitors, but you can kind of tell when someone's looking off to the side and probably typing and doing some other work. So that's an expectation that's good to set. Shut off your email, shut off all your other programs, and your next hour and a half is just with me, and please give me your full attention. And that can be an expectation that you set with your learners from the beginning. So you're gonna look at things like that, like are they fidgeting? Do they look tired? Are they sitting like this? All those different types of things that show to you that they're either disinterested, maybe they're frustrated, or they're just disengaging with the content. And it could be something as simple as it's 3 p.m., they hit their wall, like that after lunch slump where they probably need a little bit more sugar. And if I was training, this would be the time that I then bring out the candy so people kind of keep on their sugar high. And we just need to take some time for an energizer. So that is where I will pop in an energizer. So have some of those things in your back pocket and talk to your client about some of these energizers that you like to use to bring up the fun, to bring up the momentum, and to make sure that you are, bringing your students back and getting them to like kind of relax, breathe. We're almost done. Now let's just sit down and get through the rest of the session. But those are definitely some good things to have in your back pocket. You also want to just check check to see who's maybe engaged and disengaged. If it's the whole class, you pop in the energizer. If it's just a few people, make note of who they are and then privately message them during breaks and things like that. Just asking, how they're doing, just checking in. If there is something that they are, they're still confused about that we went over, they may have some further questions. That is a good way to make sure you can bring in some of those learners that maybe they're disengaged because they missed a part of the session earlier. They weren't exactly clear and they just needed a couple of extra minutes of one-on-one instruction in order to understand that process or that learning. Most importantly, make sure that the session is not about you. It is about the learners and they're at the center. So if you need to make a little shift here and there, make sure you are doing that. And so whether it is speeding up certain sections, slowing down on others, and figuring out how you need to maybe change a few things in order to, do better for your learners and make it, more custom to them, to that classroom, then that's fine. Just make sure that you are checking in with them and seeing how they're doing throughout the session. So having those opportunities as you're building the curriculum to ask questions, to solicit them for feedback and ask them to engage is definitely a way to do that. So where you may need to go back and revisit a concept, or you can kind of speed up because they're a pretty advanced class. All in all though, every single classroom is going to be different and every single one is going to give you more experience and expertise that you can bring to your next classroom. And honestly, facilitation is a skill. It is a craft and it is something that you're constantly honing, getting better at. And so I definitely suggest that you take opportunities to do facilitation, you take opportunities to practice in front of others. Maybe you take an improv class. I know a lot of trainers that do things like that and it really helps them with their facilitation game, and it's kind of like acting, like treating it like your craft. Are you ready to take the next step in instructional design and freelancing? Well, click the link down below to grab my free 6-step blueprint to break into L&D success. Friends, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!